have negative effects in terms of introduction of invasive species or waste, for example. It's not yet possible to quantify the point at which the negative effects outweigh the positive one. So Sargassum requires a multi-sector approach that considers climate change, pollution, fishery, and so right, in direct response to country or party who are being significantly impacted by excess sargassum, specifically on fishery, coastal, and marine biodiversity, human health, and tourism. So, Sargassum is a priority issue for our work under the Cartagena Convention. During the 15th meeting of contracting party to the Convention for the protection and development of the marine environment in Honduras in 2019, our contracting party recommended that the Secretariat of the Convention take action on Sargassum and enhance a regional collaboration. In 2019, we attended the International Sargassum Conference in Guadeloupe. We spoke about that before. And finally, the Regional Strategic and Action Plan identified Sargassum as a key stressor, not only due to its impact on aesthetic, tourism, and fisheries, but also a potential carrier of invasive species and microplastics. That's why the Secretariat of the Convention asked us, the SPORAC, to work with the LBS, LBS RAC, to work on Sargassum. In addition to this, Secretariat developed several other knowledge products with the other RAC, LBS RAC, and the SPORAC, supported by the SPOSTAC, ad hoc working group on Sargassum, and key expert, carried out activity to foster regional coordination and collaboration between stakeholders to effectively assess the impact of Sargassum influx on biodiversity and ecosystem, as well as strengthen the management of Sargassum proliferation and coastal accumulation in the wider Caribbean. So there is work that have been done. You can see here the conclusion of the Sargassum working group in the SPO protocol. The conclusion, we have to work about governance, improve research, improve management, make communication, and find sustainable financing resources. In the middle, you can see the conclusion of the 2021 Sargassum White Paper. And on the right for you, you can see the Sargassum Action Plan. Finally, our last stack asks us to work on Sargassum. I won't read that, but you have to know that now contracting party ask us to work on the Sargassum issue in the SARCOP program that we heard before, and with the other RACs, notably LBS protocol. So, what do we need? The SPORAC proposed to conduct a literature review, it is our job, on the effect of Sargassum influx on biodiversity and ecosystem based on the existing studies. It's not another studies, and consultation with experts. I heard since this morning there is a lot of studies, there is a lot of literature. I think that this will help us commission further study to find out, for example, at what depth rafts are harmful to ecosystem, or how to model coastal ecology as is done for oil spill and waste, for example. We think that contracting parties need a decision support tool, but the same one in our area of work. It won't be the anti tool lost in the galaxy of initiative, but rather an essential tool for the future that capitalizing with other existing data, like some tools and platforms, and allow a common methodology to evaluate, quantify risk and impacts of Sargassum influxes along the coastline based on predictive models and sensitivities along the coastline. Basically, we need to find a way of modeling coastal trending, whatever the pollution. It might be useful, for example, to see if there is any correlation on movement quantities with nutrient levels and even with heavy metal residues, which has an implication for what it can be used for. Finally, we propose also to support governance through regional and international cooperation facilities. So, what contribution can we make to the Sargassum influx issue? While we recognize that there might be opportunities for reuse Sargassum, we need to be able to assess possible impacts of heavy metal on reuse opportunities as well as predictability of influx in the future. This is where research and early detection is needed. Sargassum is a very high priority issue for our contracting party like the Dominican Republic at the highest political level, including ministries of environment, industry, mining, tourism, fisheries, etc. The governments are therefore very interested in how the Secretariat, with the support from the RACs, can raise the profile of this issue at the highest political level within UNEP. The upcoming Cartagena Convention, COP, in October, can be used to make decisions on how the Secretariat and the RACs can continue to support contracting party in the wider Caribbean region on this issue. And as always, we encourage ratification of the SPO and LBS protocol to work together more closely. If you want to read something, thank you.
Gracias a la señora Rosín por su presentación y llamamos de inmediato a Karima Deya, directora del proyecto PNUD para Barbados y el Caribe Oriental.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am with the UNDP office. Not hearing me okay? Better? Yes, okay. I am with the United Nations Development Program Office in Barbados and the Eastern Caribbean. Thank you for the opportunity to present here this afternoon. I'm conscious that it's the end of a very full day and I am between you and the end of it. I hear you, room, I hear the message. So I'm going to adjust a bit as I go. I'm probably not going to use all of my slides. I'm going to try to offer a synthesis and then a few thoughts on where we go from here. So, a bit of a situational analysis. 10 years plus, we're still here, we're still struggling. We heard today developing countries saying they need external support to still help with this ongoing problem. We are also hearing development partners say that they want to understand where their support is best placed. I feel like we still need some specifics and to flesh out how to make that connection. I also feel like one of the things that stands out about today is the sheer volume of information. This is a very noisy space. There's a lot. It can be difficult to keep track of. So I'm going to attempt to offer a sort of a brief outline of just my thoughts on the key points. So with at best mixed success, we continue to try to remove or deflect the sargassum. We've heard a lot about that. Today I won't get into details. I'm going to thread this through a bit with some of the work that we're doing in the Eastern Caribbean. The project currently being implemented by UNDP with funding from the government of Japan is aiming to support national capacities in 5 Eastern Caribbean small island developing states. The primary focus of that support is in providing equipment for clearing sargassum. They're also supporting activities in terms of management planning, monitoring, and supporting regional dialogues and information dissemination. If you'd like some more information about the project, there's a website. You can also contact us. I won't get into a deep dive on that. As we continue with these efforts on clearing, either manually or with equipment or deflection, we know that these interventions are labor and resource intensive, costly, operationally challenging, and there are negative environmental impacts. The UNDP, Government of Japan project, attempts to address these concerns by providing equipment for the countries, which is the big cost, especially for small island developing states. We are also looking at site-specific management and operational plans, and then sharing lessons learned with others in the region. A recent UE-SERMI's publication, a management toolbox, aims to provide some overall guidance on management, the use and selection of equipment, and the development of operational plans. It's a useful resource, but is pretty general and high level and does not get into the nitty-gritty of site-specific interventions because this is very site-specific. But we have a gap. If we achieve our objective with this project to help countries to be able to upscale clearing of sargassum using heavy equipment, we open the question of what do we do with the sargassum? Where does it go? Especially in small island developing states, we already have stressed waste management systems. We've heard a lot about valorization or monetization. There's been a lot of hype, but this hasn't materialized. This is currently not stepping up to the problem at scale to receive that sargassum that we need to clear off the beach. We've heard a lot about all the different things we can do with sargassum. There's a lot of potential. Potential is great, but for the time being, there's a big gap. And that question of what do we do with it until there's something to take it, I think is one of the biggest questions that we're facing right now. Anne spoke about this earlier. This publication quite nicely, I think, synthesizes the main challenges to upscaling valorization. I won't get into detail. We had a recent panel discussion in partnership with UE-SERMI's where we touched on this as well. We focused really on those physical supply side constraints in terms of the uncertainty on supply, when, where, how much, the uncertainty on chemical composition and contamination, and the challenges and high costs of collection, transport, and storage. All of this uncertainty on the supply side, I thought we had forecasting tools. We do, we heard about those today. The challenge is that for right now, they're still pretty coarse in space and time. So they can tell us sargassum is coming in high, low, medium quantities to this general region over the next couple of months. That's kind of like knowing that hurricane season is approaching, so generally get ready. There isn't anything yet that can tell us sargassum is going to arrive on this beach in the next 3 days. And then 2 days later, it will wrap around the point and come to this beach. There are quite a few barriers, technically, to getting to that point of forecasting in terms of the complexity and the labor intensiveness of the models. So where does that leave us? Management is now this kind of balancing act. Can we remove enough sargassum strategically from high priority sites, maybe above a certain threshold or at key times, so that we take the worst off of the problem without generating so much that we have a problem of what to do with it. That's kind of where we are now. And that's our best bet, is to have strategic management plans that help us to figure out how we can take the worst of it off by timing carefully, selecting sites carefully, but not generating so much that we can't manage it. I'll be quick here. that type of management planning that needs a national policy framework and sort of a cascading system of plans to help us do that. There's some research, this is just an example of how the disaster risk reduction framework and assessing hazard and exposure can help to prioritize sites based on assets at the site and the extent of the hazard, considering sargassum to be a hazard in this context, to help prioritize sites for that type of management planning. To advance the valorization question, in my opinion, the question is not so much, can we use sargassum? Yes, we've shown that we can use the sargassum. A lot of the research focuses on particular products or particular production processes. The bigger question is, can we utilize the sargassum at the scale of the problem? And so some studies are coming out now, so I'm happy to see the work that the EU is commissioning to look at things more on that level and to look at the feasibility of valorization at scale. These types of studies need to look at the whole process. This is from the 2021 Sargassum White Paper. We need to look at the entire process from collection to transport to harvesting to storage, right through to distribution and sales and marketing. For a product to be viable, there has to be enough demand for it that it will bring in enough revenue to make a profit over the significant costs on the supply side. I noticed mon ami Jean-Philippe mentioned that the challenges of harvesting, transport, and storage right now are mainly borne by governments. I think that says a lot about the risk that is currently involved in that side of things, that it falls to government to undertake that. And that is where I think external support is needed to address these uncertainties and these challenges and shift the question of the viability of this, if that is going to be the case. I'm going to wrap up here and skip the other slides. I want to say that I like some of the final questions that my friend from the EU had. I think it's a good question to ask, what do we do if we can't scale this? Because that's a possibility, and I think it's better to face that possibility than to carry on in unrealistic optimism about it. So I think that there are some good questions that have been asked here today, and an optimistic but realistic approach is what we need to move forward in this situation. I will also add, it was not the focus of this presentation. I was conscious that we were in a section that was about policy and regional cooperation. But as we look at helping countries under the UNDP project to procure equipment, we are interested in information about what works and what doesn't work. I want to note that as we talk about regional cooperation, actually, I will skip ahead and show you this from the white paper. As we talk about regional cooperation, I want to recommend a little bit of critical thinking to recognize the diversity of the region. Small island developing states in the Eastern Caribbean have very different circumstances than the Northern Caribbean and the Western Caribbean. As we look at the equipment, one of our key challenges is our very different environmental conditions, our very different sea conditions. We need a little critical thinking to unpack what is transferable from what is not. I would encourage that. And having said that, we would also welcome input and information sharing on what works elsewhere in terms of equipment and clearing sargassum as we collect information to support that procurement. And if there are any questions for us at any point, I believe that contact information is shared. Thank you so much, and have a good afternoon, everyone.
Gracias a la señora Degia. Invitamos a nuestra última expositora, la señora Carrie Cadme, del Banco Mundial.
Perfect, thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Carrie Cadman. I'm at the World Bank, and I'd like to touch on a few points today. There's been a very rich exchange all throughout the day in all of the different sessions, and I'd like to just come together in terms of the regional integration, the regional cooperation that we've talked about, in looking at four main pillars. In terms of regional cooperation, in terms of institutions like the World Bank, what are the main principal pillars of a very at-scale and proactive response, given the vast knowledge that is already out there in terms of the breadth and the depth of the science, of the operational piloting of solutions, of micro solutions, of meso solutions, of financing and operationalizing different ways and different approaches to addressing this collective challenge. So in the first pillar, we've heard a lot about responses, knowing where the sargassum influx is, where it's going to be going. There are already various different mechanisms that are available today, but definitely a regional early warning system would attend to a lot of the questions and concerns and doubts and gaps that we've heard of today from many of the speakers. This early warning system for the wider Caribbean can be an integrated IT platform where it would be open access, and it would allow us collectively across the Caribbean to be able to deploy the types of solutions and financing that are needed. In the second pillar, mobile physical infrastructure, we've seen many models, many examples that have been piloted at different scales across the Caribbean. And this mobile physical infrastructure, in a sense, it could be part of a rapid response regional and or sub-regional facility that could rapidly deploy that mobile infrastructure to capture the sargassum before it reaches the beach. This would allow for collection offshore. It would effectively redirect the live resources for use and repurposing, and it would avoid beaching, right, as we know. So these two pillars right here would be immediate ways at a regional scale to collect resources and look at effective ways to solve this very dynamic challenge. It moves in space and time, but it also allows for collective and unified use of a type of mobile infrastructure that can go to where the next sargassum influx is. In the third pillar, establishing the regional financial architecture for this challenge. Now, this is where institutions like the World Bank come in. We are a bank. We know how to put and structure an entire operational financial architecture for the world, for sectoral challenges, and for these immediate crises that are occurring. What do? You basically put together a framework that would crowd in multiple sources and typologies of financing. You would channel them appropriately, and you would introduce innovative financing in a collective basket that can be very quickly deployed and operationalized in terms of parametric risk insurance, for example, bonds, guarantees, and of course, climate finance. So you do need the operational and physical architecture, you need the financial architecture, and you need a way to, at the regional and sub-regional and even national level, know how to put all of these engines in place. The fourth pillar is identifying and unlocking value chains. We've heard a lot about different value chains and a lot of different opportunities. You want to be able to put in place these value chains and create these new industries, but your raw materials are dynamic. They change in space and time. You don't have a fixed volume. You don't know what your supply is going to be in any year or in any season of that year. So to establish these from a regional perspective, how can you know, and you link it with your early warning system, how do you know where this dynamic raw resource is? And then just putting it out there, this might be a little bit provocative, but it's something to consider, that once this engine is up and running, right, once you have this operational system up and running and the collaboration across the region going, you could consider the pre-purchase of the sargassum at sea before, obviously, we avoid the beaching, And this allows for access to those resources on a far more stable basis. So you take that dynamic nature in space and time away. But again, this is in the future. This is a part of putting together these very core pillars of the solution. And Minister Hatton had said at the beginning and has said throughout, even at the roundtable back in March, we need a scalable solution. This is an enormous challenge for the entire region. We have to go from micro and meso solutions to really large-scale financing, large-scale solutions collectively across a very diverse region. And so the regional coordination and regional cooperation are key pillars of this. In terms of what the World Bank is doing, we're doing regional analytical, technical, and operational solutions. The bank does this. This is the bread and butter, the ABCs of what the World Bank does. We're working in the Eastern Caribbean, in Grenada, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, St. Lucia, many of whom were here today as wonderful panelists, guests, and honorary members of this illustrious event. And we've heard from them in the Eastern Caribbean the typology and the challenges that they face. So our program, that I'll talk a little bit about in a minute, is active, and we're investing millions of dollars in the Eastern Caribbean individually as countries, but across the OECS member states. In Belize, we have our new Belize Blue Cities program. I'll talk a little bit about that in a moment. With the Dominican Republic, we're starting a dialogue right now. We're starting with a regional sargassum assessment. This is our analytical work and technical assistance. And then in Jamaica and Mexico and in other countries, we have strong collaboration with our Mexican colleagues, with whom we're putting together these investment pillars at the national level that all tie back to regional coordination and cooperation. In terms of the regional assessment, and this is of course for everyone in the room, for all countries in the wider Caribbean, the World Bank is looking at the regional assessment, looking at monitoring and forecasting, looking at the impacts on marine life and ecosystems, and the impacts on livelihoods, and particularly the fisheries and tourism sectors. This is open to all countries in the wider Caribbean. We want you to be part and parcel of this. We then have a second pillar on value chain assessment of these economic opportunities. So the analysis of the potential opportunities, for example, as plastics alternatives, as we know, and then most importantly, and what the bank does best, is really on the investment requirements and the regulatory reforms that are needed, because these are diverse and different in each of the countries. In terms of what we're doing in the Eastern Caribbean, just so you know, on the investment platform side, we have a blue economy investment platform. It includes many countries in the Eastern Caribbean, and it looks at smart recovery, climate resilience, various sectors, themes, mechanisms, and typologies. And it's this type of sub-regional investment architecture that allows us to operationalize the types of investments and a diversity of approaches in a very systematic way that allows these countries, one, to benefit and build up their blue economies, a healthy blue economy, and by that I mean both the living blue economy assets that they have, but also attending to the non-living blue economy, and making sure that how you attend and view sargassum, you're able to really address both sides of your blue economy. It also allows us, as we're working, and it's a very nice model, it also allows us to foment the internal competition that these countries have for tourism dollars, right? They're neighbors, they work together, they're in that cordillera together, but they also compete with each other. So how do you have healthy competition, but you're also dealing with the problem together in a unified form? A very different model is what we have in Belize. It's our Belize Blue Cities and Beyond program. And Belize has a very advanced coastal and marine, healthy, living blue asset marketing scheme. It's very well known, but its entire coastline is being, of course, damaged and adversely affected by sargassum. And so what we're doing is we're looking at how do we help Belize across its entire coastline fortify the resilience of its coastline and attend to addressing this sargassum. So in each of our investment programs in various countries, we're putting in and injecting the work that's needed on sargassum, and these are just a couple of examples. Let me stop there. I know it's very late in the day, but I'd really like to go back to those 4 pillars. And you know, most of you, I'm sure all of you, you know this, the World Bank works for you. And so our request is use us in the way that makes the most sense for you. And we're very good at putting together the financial architecture, the operational architecture for these types of sub-regional, regional, and global problems. And so when we look at something like this, to act swiftly in a crisis response mechanism, the World Bank can be used to help all of you collectively to put this together. So thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Gracias a la señora Cadma, y con esta presentación concluimos esta sesión sobre el marco político y la cooperación regional. Y para este cierre importante, invitamos a su excelencia la señora Katja Alfred, embajadora de la Unión Europea en República Dominicana, para compartir algunas palabras de clausura.
Estimados ministros, viceministros, funcionarios del sector público, estimados participantes, expositores, estamos al final de un día bien largo, de un día con muchísimas informaciones, y quiero decir que cuando se ve en los diferentes vídeos hoy el impacto desastroso y las cantidades de sargazo en las hermosas playas de la República Dominicana y las otras costas del Caribe, es fácil, muy fácil a desesperar. Pero la conferencia, pienso hoy, también ha mostrado que hay esperanza y que existen vías para encontrar soluciones. No hay todavía la solución, pero el sargazo tiene el potencial para muchos usos diversos. Y lo que es importante es que tiene el potencial también para usos rentables en el sentido comercial. Es importante porque eso es la condición sine qua non para que se implique el sector privado. Sin el sector privado no va a ser posible convertir ese reto económico y medioambiental en una oportunidad. Hemos escuchado que el sargazo puede ser parte de la solución de la transición energética como materia de base para biocarburantes, para materiales sostenibles en la construcción o para material renovable en la industria textil. Se pueden crear empleos, por ejemplo, en la recolección en el mar, en el procesamiento, fabricación y reparación de equipos de recogida y transporte, en la transformación y la creación de nuevas industrias que gracias a los esfuerzos de investigación ya se están promoviendo. Sin embargo, siguen existiendo retos importantísimos. Por ejemplo, la imprevisibilidad del suministro, la composición química, el acceso a fondos para financiar la investigación y para fomentar el sector privado a invertir en la industria del sargazo. También hay preguntas importantes de manera jurídica o de derecho internacional. Por ejemplo, ¿a quién pertenece el sargazo en las aguas internacionales? Pero quizás el reto más importante es el tiempo, o mejor dicho, la falta de tiempo. El sargazo ya está en cantidades enormes, en cantidades crecientes cada año, y está impactando cada día los ecosistemas, el sector turístico y la salud humana. Por eso la acción concertada de todos los actores que pueden contribuir a identificar soluciones es tan importante. Espero que la conferencia de hoy ha podido contribuir a facilitar, aunar recursos, facilitar la cooperación y la coordinación para gestionar el sargazo que ya está contaminando el mar del Caribe. Señoras y señores, quisiera reiterar que para encontrar soluciones a largo plazo se necesita también acción a nivel internacional para abordar temas como el financiamiento o para abordar las causas de la proliferación masiva de esta alga. Es indispensable que se realicen investigaciones en el origen del crecimiento exponencial, se hagan tratados o convenios internacionales para reducir el uso de fertilizantes y otras sustancias que pueden ocasionar la amplificación del fenómeno de Sargazo. Asimismo, es mandatorio una acción decisiva contra el cambio climático y el calentamiento de los océanos. Desde la Unión Europea estamos comprometidos a trabajar con la región en los esfuerzos para encontrar soluciones para manejar el sargazo y para apoyar una acción a nivel regional e internacional en los foros multilaterales. No quiero terminar sin agradecer a todos los panelistas y expositores que nos han acompañado. Quiero felicitar y agradecer a nuestros amigos dominicanos por haber tomado el liderazgo en el tema de Sargazo con esta conferencia hoy. Y quiero agradecer también a mi colega Sara Soriano por su tremendo trabajo y aporte en la organización de la conferencia. Y finalmente, espero que nuestro evento sea el inicio de una verdadera cooperación regional e internacional. Muchas gracias.
Muchísimas gracias a la embajadora por sus palabras y en este momento llamamos al señor Miguel Seara Hatton, ministro de Medio Ambiente y Recursos Naturales.
Bueno, primero quiero agradecerle a todo el trabajo que hemos realizado todos en este día de hoy, la elaboración de las presentaciones que han sido todas muy educativas y que nos han presentado la multidimensionalidad que tiene este fenómeno. Quiero agradecer a la Unión Europea por todo el apoyo que nos dio para este evento y quisiera compartir más que nada preocupaciones desde el Ministerio de Medio Ambiente que vive cada día este fenómeno. Yo creo que el sargazo es la expresión de un orden mundial terriblemente injusto, porque al final de cuentas, como dije al principio, nosotros no generamos esta situación y estamos siendo víctimas de ella. Estamos siendo víctimas no en algo superficial, algo pueril, sino en la actividad económica fundamental de nuestras economías. Si a nosotros se nos derrumba la actividad turística por el sargazo, eso tendrá un impacto terrible en la sociedad dominicana, porque tendríamos que volvernos a reinventar como país, reorganizar nuestra economía, reorganizar nuestra sociedad. Y eso no se daría si no es en el marco de una profunda crisis económica y social. Entonces creo que eso es algo que tenemos que tener presente, esta expresión de un problema terriblemente injusto de la dinámica social internacional que se produce. Eso me lleva otra vez a repetir algo que dije, el tema de financiamiento. La adaptación es nuestro desafío como país en desarrollo. Nosotros aportamos apenas el 0.008% a los gases de efecto invernadero, pero necesitamos mucha plata para reestructurar nuestro aparato productivo y hacerlo depender de la naturaleza, y eso implica un gran cambio y un gran costo, pero no hay ese financiamiento, y eso es parte también de esta injusticia que estamos viviendo. Tenemos que hacer un esfuerzo por entender el fenómeno. Indudablemente en este proceso de adaptación creo que nos hace falta muchísimo más conocimiento, y fue evidente con todas las presentaciones que se hicieron acá, de entender qué es este fenómeno, cómo se produce, cuándo, con qué intensidad, capacidad de predecir un poco, como dirían los economistas, hace falta un modelo dinámico que nos permita predecir el fenómeno. Las trayectorias son importantes. Esta es una situación donde las trayectorias influyen en el resultado final, así que hace todavía más difícil la experiencia de predicción, la necesidad de encontrar verdaderas actividades industriales que puedan absorber. Creo que aquí hay ha habido bastante ejemplos, pero todavía son pequeños montos que, pensando en República Dominicana, con 4 o 5 millones de toneladas es muy difícil. O sea, no nos responde, tenemos que ser más creativos. Y finalmente, todo este tema de la incertidumbre. El cambio climático ha traído una gran incertidumbre y tenemos que readaptarnos a todo. Lo hemos visto desde las lluvias, la sequía, los incendios y la expresión más concreta y más evidente de este cambio climático, que es el sargazo. Y aquí realmente de verdad que tenemos que pensar en un marco de una gran, y diseñar políticas en un marco de una gran incertidumbre, porque no sabemos si el año que viene llegan 10, 15, 20, 30 millones de toneladas, no lo sabemos. Quizás llega una, que bueno, ojalá, o quizás no llega ninguna, pero tenemos una gran incertidumbre sobre el futuro. Muchas gracias, creo que esto ha sido una gran experiencia. Muchas gracias a la Cancillería, a Roberto, por todo el apoyo que ha dado a esta experiencia de discusión. Y creo que abrimos aquí un espacio nuevo, ojalá que sea en la Asociación de Estados del Caribe, que creo que es el espacio más adecuado para que nos podamos sentar todos alrededor de una mesa a intercambiar experiencias y saber cómo vamos a enfrentarlos en conjunto. Muchas gracias.
Agradecemos las palabras del señor Seara Hatton y a continuación invitamos al excelentísimo señor Roberto Álvarez, ministro de Relaciones Exteriores de la República Dominicana, quien tiene importantes palabras para el cierre de este evento.
Muchas gracias por el calificativo de importante. Buenas tardes. Gracias a todos por haberse quedado, todos los que están presentes aquí y los que siguen en línea todavía hasta este momento. En primer lugar, muchas gracias a todo el equipo que ha montado este evento de hoy. Realmente han hecho un gran esfuerzo y le agradecemos sobremanera todo lo logrado. A todos los panelistas que nos han informado en el día de hoy, también le agradecemos. A los que han montado acá la exposición de productos muy interesantes, innovadores, informativos, muchas gracias. A nombre del Ministerio de Relaciones Exteriores del Gobierno Dominicano. A la Unión Europea, una mención especial y un agradecimiento por todo el apoyo en lograr este evento también del día de hoy. Al secretario general de la Asociación de Estados del Caribe, Rodolfo Sabonge, muchas gracias por tu presencia y por toda tu colaboración también. Yo he aprendido mucho en el día de hoy sobre los esfuerzos nacionales que se están llevando a cabo, los esfuerzos regionales y internacionales también en el sentido más amplio de la región del Caribe. Aquí tenemos múltiples problemas, un desafío enorme, múltiples problemas técnicos, de salud, biodiversidad, financieros. Tenemos también problemas políticos. Tenemos un serio problema político. Uno de los aspectos que a mí me ha llamado la atención, en primer lugar, no quiero que nadie vaya a malinterpretar mis palabras, lo que voy a decir ahora. Yo realmente agradezco profundamente todos los esfuerzos que se están llevando a cabo. Pero hemos escuchado hoy de diversas instituciones internacionales acá, Banco Interamericano de Desarrollo, Banco Mundial, la Agencia Francesa de Desarrollo, el PNUD con financiamiento del Japón. Escuchamos también mencionado al Banco de Desarrollo del Caribe, etc. Lo que aquí no escuchamos es una coordinación efectiva, real, entre todas estas organizaciones y los esfuerzos que se están llevando a cabo. Entre otros, fue el ministro del Medio Ambiente de Jamaica quien mencionó como uno de los desafíos centrales la necesidad de un sistema integrado de información y gestión que informe y coordine los proyectos, programas, estudios, etcétera, que se están llevando a cabo en la región. Un plan de acción regional. No lo tenemos. Tenemos múltiples o varios proyectos, pero no hay esa interconexión necesaria. Y no solamente no hay esa interconexión necesaria, sino que tampoco tenemos la gobernanza política centralizada. Esto es parte de una realidad. El Caribe fue la última frontera imperial y es hoy en día todavía una realidad. Y aquí escuchamos de los esfuerzos del Team Europa. De nuevo, los aplaudo, están muy bien, pero de los esfuerzos holandeses, de los diversos esfuerzos que se están llevando a cabo, sin que hablemos de quién va a ser el ente rector. Tenemos una asociación de estados del Caribe que hasta escuchamos a su secretario general al inicio hacer una excelente presentación. Pero aquí, después en las diversas presentaciones del día de hoy, no escuchamos un apoyo a esa institución que incluye a todos los países aquí afectados. Es la única institución regional caribeña que incluye a todos. Necesitamos realmente considerar la creación, ya existe un proyecto, la creación de un grupo de trabajo como parte de la Comisión del Mar Caribe que existe en la asociación, en la EC. Si no le damos vida política a esta institución, los esfuerzos van a continuar dispersos, más lentos, costosos. Y me viene a la mente, lo digo de vez en cuando, un aforismo africano que dice, si quieres ir rápido, marcha solo. Pero si quieres llegar lejos, marcha acompañado. Y eso es lo que necesitamos acá, realmente una coordinación efectiva de todos los programas que se están llevando a cabo al día de hoy. En una alianza, como dijo la embajadora AFELT de la Unión Europea, ciertamente un esfuerzo público-privado. No existe otra alternativa para lograrlo. Pero la gobernanza política regional tiene que estar presente y hoy en día no lo está. Pues bien, a todos los que han hecho aquí ofertas, como por ejemplo a México, un buque plataforma para hacer una investigación científica más profunda sobre las causas. Muchísimas gracias, aceptamos todos los ofrecimientos que aquí se han hecho. A todos los diferentes entes, satélites científicos, Copérnicus, NOAA, CIMAR de México, que utiliza los insumos de Estados Unidos, de la NOAA o de las universidades, la Universidad de Florida. Muchísimas gracias. Si vamos a resolver este problema que afecta la vida de tantas personas a diario en el Caribe, la supervivencia diaria de tantas personas, necesitamos este momento de hoy. Ha sido un pasito en este proceso que tiene que continuar muy pronto en un siguiente paso. Y nosotros, en este ministerio, el Ministerio de Medio Ambiente, agradecemos profundamente al ministro Seara toda su presencia en el día de hoy. Nos comprometemos a continuar presionando para que este esfuerzo continúe vigente hacia un futuro muy cercano para encontrar una solución a este grave problema, de que existen los recursos para ello, los recursos financieros existen. La cuestión científica, si tenemos una inteligencia artificial que está a punto hoy en día de ser la primera inteligencia que cree una religión, ¿por qué no podemos apelar a estos recursos para encontrar una solución a este problema? Yo creo que tenemos todos los recursos para ello en el día de hoy. Manos a la obra. Muchas gracias.
Muchísimas gracias al señor ministro y queremos agradecer a cada uno de ustedes por su participación en este importante evento, su presencia aquí, particularmente de aquellos que vienen desde otros países. Es una señal de nuestro compromiso regional en encontrar una solución y gestión sostenible del sargazo, que representa una real amenaza para nuestras sociedades. La Conferencia Regional Gran Caribe Unión Europea sobre Sargazo, convertir el sargazo en una oportunidad, queda oficialmente concluida. A ustedes muchas gracias por el honor de su presencia y que pasen feliz resto de la noche.